If you ask most people about Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy, they'll tell you that it's just yet another collectathon from the PS2 era, but there's a very specific feeling that happens when you boot it up for the first time in years. You load in, take control of Jak, and you push the analog stick forward, and almost immediately something clicks. Jak accelerates smoothly. He doesn't snap to a grid, he doesn't feel stiff or floaty, he just moves. And if you grew up playing platformers in the early 2000s, this feeling is almost confusing, because a lot of games from that era don't feel this good anymore. Some feel dated, some feel clunky, some feel like they were designed around limitations we've long since moved past. But Jak and Daxter? Jak and Daxter still feels right. And today, I just want to talk about why. Specifically, I want to break down Jak and Daxter's movement system and explain why I find the game to be excellent. Not in terms of story, characters, or world building, but in terms of something far more primal and important, how it feels to move your character throughout the world. Because in platformers, movement isn't just another mechanic, it is the game. You could argue that this is somewhat of a bold statement, but if a platformer's movement doesn't feel good, nothing else really matters. You can have beautiful art direction, great music, clever level design, charming characters, but if the act of running, jumping, and turning feels off, the whole thing collapses. And if you think about it, the reason is simple. In platformers, movement is 90% of what you do during gameplay. You don't just occasionally move like you do in an RPG, you don't only move between encounters like in a shooter. Movement is the constant. It's the thing you're doing every single second. This ends up meaning that small choices about its design matter immensely. How fast does the character accelerate? How much momentum do they carry? Can you adjust mid-air? How much control do you have as a player? How much does the game impose its mechanics over you? The answers to these questions are why Jak and Daxter feels modern 25 years after its release, while Crash Bandicoot, a game made by the very same studio, has a more classic feeling to its movement. Crash approaches movement like a precision obstacle course. Jak and Daxter, however, did something much more daring. It made movement feel natural, fluid, and player-driven in a manner that was way ahead of its time. This fix on fluidity also comes up in other areas of the game's design. At the time, most 3D platformers were still level-based. You entered a stage, completed its objectives, and moved on to the next one. Then Jak and Daxter entered the chat and said no loading screens, no rigid start and end points, just a continuous and seamless world that you can run through from beginning to end. I know that I just said a few moments ago that I wouldn't go into world building, but it's imperative to discuss somewhat of the level design since that's what the movement system is designed to overcome, in the same way in which the combat system of a game like Dark Souls is used to overcome its enemies. And this is where Jak immediately separates itself from its peers. Given how the world of Jak and Daxter feels more organic than its contemporary counterparts, its movement also needs to be like that, so let's talk about how Jak actually moves. Let's start with the most basic stuff. Jak doesn't instantly snap to full speed whenever you push the stick. He eases into motion, building speed smoothly, and coming to a gradual stop once you let go of it. This may sound basic now, but if you compare this to Crash Bandicoot, where movement is tight, snappy, and very binary, Jak feels almost lifelike. In comparison, Crash moves like a program. Jak, however, moves like a body. The main reason for this is how Jak and Daxter handles momentum. Jak carries speed naturally, which at first glance might be something you'd want to avoid in a platformer, given how important it is to have precise control over your character, but the game very rarely punishes you for it. Now compare this to how Crash Bandicoot plays, where momentum is your greatest enemy. In Crash, speed is something you want to constantly avoid due to how dangerous it is. The faster you go, the less time you have to react, and the more likely you are to misjudge a jump or the distance to an enemy, which leads to you either taking damage or straight up dying. From the very beginning, Crash's movement communicates a clear message. It is the game that is in charge. Your job is to survive it. Now contrast that with Jak and Daxter. Jak effectively flips that relationship. Speed in Jak is empowering, and the faster you move, the more fun the game feels to play. This is not only because Jak's momentum is forgiving, but because the entire system is designed to encourage you to experiment with it, giving you multiple tools to correct mistakes should you make one. If, for example, you overshoot a jump, you can often adjust mid-air with your double jump and spin kick or grab a ledge. So as we just established, Jak doesn't punish speed, it inspires and supports it. This is why moving fast in Jak feels exhilarating, while moving fast in Crash feels stressful. Crash Bandicoot is about control and precision under pressure. Jak and Daxter is about freedom through movement. This is even more obvious when you take a look at what offensive tools each of the characters brings to the table. In Crash Bandicoot, your moves have very clear and narrow purposes. In order to deal with an enemy, you either land on them, just like you do in Super Mario, or you use your spin attack, that's it. Crash's spin attack exists almost exclusively to kill enemies, destroy boxes, and occasionally activate switches, but here's the important part. It doesn't affect your speed, momentum, or trajectory in any shape or form, meaning that it doesn't add to your traversal options in any other way that isn't getting rid of an obstacle in your path. So basically you move to the challenge, use combat on the challenge, and once the enemy is gone, movement resumes exactly as it was before. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Given how essential precise movement in Crash is, it makes sense that its combat is completely separated from its movement. And it isn't necessarily because of the game's age. Mirror's Edge was released almost a decade later, and it also takes this approach. In that game, combat and movement are two completely different systems that rarely interact together, and many players even go as far as arguing that the best parts of Mirror's Edge are when there's absolutely zero combat. Jak and Daxter, however, takes the opposite approach and integrates combat moves into the movement. So let's take a brief moment to break down Jak's entire moveset and understand why this is important. As the foundation of the movement system, Jak can jump, double jump, high jump, and roll jump, giving the player a wide amount of options regarding your jump's height, length, and airtime. To add to this, you have a spin kick, which, in addition to working similarly to Crash's spin attack, it also gives you a bit of upwards momentum if you're in the air, making it a makeshift triple jump. You also have access to a dive attack, allowing you to redirect your momentum downwards at any point you'd want. But the core of Jak's gameplay is another move, and that is, without a shadow of a doubt, Jak's Punch, which propels you forward in any direction of your choosing. You can even press the punch button while crouching to perform a rising uppercut. But to add to all of this, here's what makes Jak's moveset special. There are several moves in Jak's arsenal that can link into other moves, just like you do in a fighting game or in a character action game, and you can even cancel the end lag of certain moves by inputting another one. To give you a visual example, you could for instance input a jump at the end of a roll jump to get an instant high jump. After that you can do a dive attack, which has a small bounce animation at the end of it, but if you input a spin kick just before you touch the ground, you'll go into it directly, bypassing the bounce completely. And this is the main reason why it feels so fluid to play as Jak. It's not only that the movement and combat systems are intertwined within his moveset, but that the moveset flows so well into itself, allowing the player to sort of freestyle the way they want to interact with the world around them through something as simple as just moving around. But here's where things get really interesting. Jak's movement system doesn't just feel good, it scales. Up until now, we've talked about Jak and Daxter's movement as something that feels good at a casual level, but if we want to go beyond what the system was designed to do and see what it can allow us to do, there's nowhere better to look than in the game's speedrun. Because once players started pushing Jak and Daxter to its limits, they discovered something remarkable. The game's movement system isn't fragile, it's exploitable, but in the best way possible. Speedrunning has a unique way of revealing the truth about a game's mechanics, and it wouldn't be any other way with Jak and Daxter. If a movement system is rigid, overscripted, and animation locked, speedrunning tends to break it, or expose how shallow it really is. But if a movement system is momentum-based, input-driven, and as consistent as Jak's is, speedrunners don't just break it, they expand it and master it. Enter the boosted uppercut, aka the main reason why I wanted to make this video, and I'm gonna teach you how to do it. As we discussed just a second ago, you can input a jump at any point during a punch, getting you an uppercut. This is true even if you're no longer grounded, which means that you can punch off a ledge and jump to perform an uppercut mid-air, which is known as an extended uppercut. The boosted uppercut is basically the same concept, but adding the forward momentum that you get when sliding off a ledge if your movement speed is low enough. The easiest way to achieve this is to walk off a ledge, that's walking, not running, and inputting a punch and a jump as soon as you start falling, abusing the fact that the game has a mechanic called Coyote Time, which basically allows you to perform grounded actions a few frames after walking off a ledge in order to prevent frustration. If you perform it correctly, you'll slingshot forward, gaining a ton of speed, which you can keep for a bit longer if you input a spin kick right after the uppercut. A great spot to practice this is over here in Sentinel Beach, since the only way to make it to the other side is if you successfully perform a boosted uppercut, and if you fail, it only takes a couple of seconds to get back here. In simple terms, the reason why the boosted uppercut works is that the game doesn't aggressively correct speed spikes. This is the same philosophy that makes normal movement feel fluid, but cranked up to 11. So the boosted uppercut is not a glitch in the traditional sense. It's more of an emergent interaction between how Jak's attack properties natively work and how the game's programmed to allow for momentum preservation and manipulation through direct inputs, so as absurd as this may sound, the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Everything's working as intended, just faster. What's fascinating to me is that most advanced Jak movement isn't disconnected from normal play, but an extension of it. Speedrunners are still managing momentum, chaining actions, preserving speed, and redirecting velocity just like you did the last time you played the game. They're just doing it with perfect timing and precision, and the only thing that separates the way you play the game from theirs is learning this mechanic. This is a hallmark of great movement design. The skills you learn casually still apply at the highest level. And it also explains why tech like the boosted uppercut don't feel like exploits when you perform them. They feel like, oh, the game actually lets me do that. And that might be the strongest argument of all for why Jak and Daxter's movement is still remembered, still discussed, and still celebrated today. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if that's the case, leave a like and subscribe if you want more content like this, because I'm starting to take content creation a little bit more seriously. And next time you play Jak and Daxter, give the boosted uppercut a try.